Welcome to Podkey Fantasy Football, where today the market price matters as much as the player. A lot of these names still sound safe because the role, the brand, or the last good season is sticking in people's heads. The harder question is whether the next 2 years actually support the current dynasty cost or whether managers are paying for stability that is not really there. Baker Mayfield's situation is a good test of how much starter security is really worth once the contract timing turns against the player. The confirmed part is simple. He's entering the final year of his Tampa Bay deal, and he set a personal deadline to avoid negotiations during training camp. That may be reasonable from a football-focused standpoint, but it also removes one of the main pressure points he could have used to push for a new agreement. Then you layer in the production, a 63.2% completion rate, 6.8 yards per attempt, and a QB19 fantasy finish in 2025 is not collapse-level bad, but it's also not the kind of season that forces a team to lock in long-term money. At age 31, he doesn't have the age curve on his side, and the mention of a deep 2027 quarterback class matters because teams always compare veteran contract demands to incoming rookie alternatives. So the pushback here is fair too. Starting quarterbacks retain value simply because there aren't many of them. But a fifth-round startup cost assumes the market is comfortable with him staying a clear starter beyond the short term, and the evidence for that is thinner than the price suggests. Tony Pollard is another case where the problem isn't that he's suddenly useless, it's that the path to maintaining value is narrower than people want to admit. A solid but not elite 2026 as Tennessee's RB2 keeps him relevant, but at 29 and heading toward 2027 free agency, he's exactly the kind of back teams start replacing with younger and cheaper options. Running back value usually falls off before production fully disappears because managers can see the role squeeze coming. That's the real risk here. If Pollard doesn't get a touchdown spike, what is the weekly profile? Probably useful, but not insulated. And if the Titans add another back through the draft or free agency, that doesn't need to wipe him out completely to hurt him. Even a moderate cut in high-value touches would drag down his dynasty ceiling fast. So the bullish case depends heavily on scoring variance breaking his way. That's possible. It's just not the same thing as having a secure long-term role. The Chargers' tight end room is one of those depth chart stories that can look minor until you map it to actual snaps. Los Angeles added Charlie Kolar, David Njoku, and fullback Alec Ingold. The point isn't that every one of those guys is a fantasy target hog. It's that they all compete for personnel group usage, blocking assignments, and situational snaps. That matters for Aranda Gadsden because his margin for error was never huge. He was only a mid-9th round draft investment, which means the team capital behind him was low from the start. When a player with modest capital gets buried in a crowded room, the team has very little incentive to force-feed development. That's where trade value can slide before the fantasy production even fully disappears. Could he still carve out a receiving role? Sure, but the more honest read is that the environment now asks him to win efficiently on fewer snaps, and that is a much tougher bet than his earlier optimism implied. Chris Olave is tricky because the talent case is still easy to make. The risk case is just getting harder to dismiss. The confirmed concerns are the concussion history and the blood clot scare. Those are not normal wear and tear footnotes. If he misses 5 or 6 games in a PPR season, the market reaction will be severe even before you argue about long-term health. On the field, he still profiles as a real downfield weapon with strong yards per catch ability. The issue is that his fantasy output is still pretty volume sensitive. If Tyson and Lance meaningfully increase target competition, Olave doesn't need to become a bad player for his value to soften. He just needs his share to slip enough that the weekly floor gets shakier. The best argument in his favor is that good separators usually earn targets anyway. The better supported caution is that durability concerns plus even modest target pressure create a thinner margin than his name value suggests. Garrett Wilson has 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, which is exactly why this conversation needs some discipline. That production says he's good. It does not automatically say the Dynasty WR14 price is fair under his current quarterback outlook. The stated concern is that the Jets have already held him back with inconsistent quarterback play, including Geno Smith, and now the offense could be heading toward a rookie passer such as Arch Manning, who may not be NFL ready until 2028. We should separate what's solid from what's speculative. The solid part is that unstable quarterback environments absolutely cap receiver efficiency and touchdown upside. The speculative part is attaching the whole timeline to one rookie outcome before it happens. Even without overcommitting to that exact scenario, the broader point still lands. If Wilson is tied to multi-year quarterback uncertainty, then his current ranking is pricing in a cleaner future than the available evidence supports. He's still young enough and talented enough to survive bad conditions, but survival and elite payoff are different bets, and the ranking looks closer to the second. Nico Collins is where dynasty managers have to decide how much recurring missed time should cost a player before the market fully bakes it in. Missing roughly a quarter of Texans' games since 2021 because of quad, foot, hamstring issues plus concussions is enough to call availability a chronic concern rather than random bad luck. That's the floor problem. The ceiling question is separate but related. Even when healthy, if Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel keep emerging, Collins may not command the same uncontested target share managers are hoping for. That doesn't mean he stops being productive. It means the path to true difference-making value gets narrower because he has to overcome both missed games and target erosion. When a player carries both risks at once, the burden of proof shifts. You need a very strong efficiency and usage case to justify a premium valuation. RJ Harvey might be the clearest market trap in this group because the opportunity spike already happened and it didn't produce much evidence of durable starter value. His opening came after J.K. Dobbins got hurt, but 3.3 yards per carry behind a strong Broncos offensive line is a hard number to explain away. Now Dobbins is back, and Denver added Jonah Coleman in the draft, so the team behavior is telling us something important. They did not treat Harvey's stretch as proof that the job belonged to him. That doesn't mean he has zero role. It means an RB24 expert consensus rank is asking managers to pay as if the role could still scale meaningfully, while the roster signals point toward limited snap share. Sometimes fantasy markets cling to the memory of an opening on the depth chart longer than the team itself does. This looks a lot like that. The common thread here is simple. Talent matters, but contract leverage, health, team incentives, and depth chart behavior usually tell you where the value is headed before the box scores do. Thanks for listening to Podkey Fantasy Football. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.